Okay, morning everybody. It's 11 a.m. and I think we must make a start. So thank you to all those who have joined, and I will let people in as they pop up, saying that they're in my waiting room. Firstly, apologies from Andrea. She is currently out of town and not in range to join the seminar this morning. So that's why it's my face that you're seeing and not hers. But my co-pilot is Jenna, which I think most of you do know. And a very, very special welcome to Donovan Goliath. And thanks to Donovan for agreeing to be one of our presenters this morning. I think we are we looking forward to a very humorous and witty story about your personal journey. And as you've said to us, you want it to be as interactive as possible. So to all of you that are on, we would just like to invite you to please feel free to put your questions into the chat box. Donovan wants to have a conversation with everybody. And when you are invited to speak, we would ask you if you could please put your camera on, as well as make sure you unmute yourself for the duration of your interaction in the question time. So as Jen has just put it into the chat box, please post your questions into the chat box. Jenna will be handling or facilitating the question and answer aspect of this morning's presentation. And yeah, so I think I'm going to just hand over to Donovan and we'll take it from there. Welcome, Donovan. I think you need to unmute.
Yes, it's a perfect start to this whole thing, an absolutely perfect start. I mean, we haven't been doing online meetings for the last 2 years. I should know this. But firstly, I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I think this is really great. I must be honest, I was a little intimidated when I was asked to do this because I just didn't know what angle to approach it from. It's not an easy topic, the power of humor. Like, you could go in so many different directions. And after chatting to Andrea, right? She did mention that it is Andrea, right? Did I get the name right? Hashila, you're not saying anything. Okay, yes. I don't want to imagine the person who booked me for this and I get the name wrong. She did mention that I am the perfect candidate for this kind of talk. I was obviously I studied at the art and design campus at NNMU, formerly PE Tech. So I am that old. It was called PE Tech back then when I studied, and an absolutely unbelievable experience. So what I want to do here today, I was going to put a PowerPoint presentation together and show you visuals and all of these things, but I thought, no, that's not really what I want to do. In my mind, humor is a very subjective thing, and I'm not going to show you things that I've made that I think are hilarious. I'm going to show you all of those things. I just want to tell you a story. I want to tell you a story about how humor got me to where I am today, how humor got me to this position right here, just being able to speak to you guys. And I want to take it all the way back. So I'm going to start with, where I'm from. For those of you who've never heard my story before, I'm from Mthatha in the Eastern Cape. That's where I grew up. And I'm born in the 80s. So I grew up in a time when, what I ended up studying, or creativity rather, was never an option. Anything in the creative space, anything in the entertainment space was never something I thought of, pursuing or going into. There were no mentors. There was, nobody I could turn to who could guide me and kind of harness the talents I had. Like, I could draw really well when I was a kid, and I was very much interested in, head cut posters on the side of the road, or at spaza shops, Coke cans that were drawn in a very naive way, that kind of typography. I just didn't understand what it was, but I just loved the idea that this was very simple, direct communication. I just thought it was fantastic. You just needed to see a Coke can to know that you can go and buy those products there. classic information graphics. Absolutely loved it. Great graphic design. And in matric, actually, we had a guest lecturer come in. His name was Jason Crane, and he had started a drawing class as an extramural activity that I took part in. And he kind of noticed that I was very much interested in this. I asked a lot of questions. I was very much involved in this class, and he asked me what I'm going to be studying, and I said I have absolutely no idea. Because I'm definitely not a numbers person. I'm definitely not going to be a doctor. I'm not an engineer, none of these things. Every single box that I was supposed to have ticked, I mean, none appealed to me, none made sense to me at all. And he eventually said, why don't you study graphic design? I obviously had no idea what this was. And he logged onto the PE Tech website. He said, let me show you a couple of things. So looked at portfolios. We went through all the stuff, and I was just blown away, that this was an actual job, that people were being paid to do this. And it really excited me. And obviously at this point I had to go back and tell my dad that, or my parents rather, that this is what I wanted to do, which was quite a scary thing, because if I had no idea what this was about, they obviously were super clueless. Fortunately, they were very supportive, and excuse me, I went to study in PE. I studied graphic design, and when I got there, I was kind of exposed to a lot of different mediums, how to express yourself in all these different ways. I mean, in our first year, we got to do photography, we got to do design, we got to do a little bit of fashion, sculpture, ceramics, etc., etc. Really fantastic, and really opened my mind up, to just kind of create and tell my story using all of these mediums. And early on, because I had no idea, what this was, what I was getting myself into, and I didn't want to disappoint my parents, obviously, I'd spent a lot of time in the library doing research, just trying to figure out what it is about this that I liked. Why would I commit to studying something like this, and why would I make this a career choice? And I started collecting a lot of references. No internet at the time, it was still a library, so I had to, when I walked in there, I had to know exactly what I was looking for. And I quickly realized that a lot of the stuff that I was collecting and kind of saving, the stuff that appealed to me, was stuff that there was a big slant towards wit and parody and humor, nothing too serious, nothing propaganda related, it's just always kind of witty and lighthearted and fun and colorful. And very simple. Minimalism was my thing. So I found myself being drawn to this quite a bit. And only now, I mean, it's taken me a long time to realize, I mean, even growing up, I was always the jokester or the funny guy, or the one, pulling pranks here and there. I never knew that I could turn this or harness this, into what I currently do today. Anyway, this eventually became my style. I always try to create something funny in whatever I was doing, because I really loved the reaction from people whenever I put something out, when people responded to the joke, because, they could relate to whatever I was trying to communicate in whatever way I was trying to communicate it. And eventually I moved on to study, or not to study, rather I moved to Johannesburg, and I got a job in advertising. I worked as an art director at an advertising agency. It was absolutely mind-blowing, because this is where I really got to see the power of communication and the power of humor. I worked at an above-the-line agency that focused on a lot of TV ads and radio ads, big campaigns, big clients, and writing for those things was just so specific. I mean, the writers that I got to work with were just unbelievable. And strangely enough, the irony is, I mean, they would write all these incredible, like really funny, really witty scripts, but themselves were very unapproachable, awkward, introverted people, but somehow they managed to pull this out and, write these scripts that were just so hilarious, that went on to win so many awards, that just really resonated and, connected with a lot of people. And I found it to be such an interesting thing, that, we'd work on a campaign, and, after that campaign broke, a week later, somebody would ask me, hey man, have you seen that new thing that's on TV? You're in advertising. And I tell them, no, we worked on that. And, to start a conversation around it and to have somebody say, gosh, every time that thing comes on, I call my wife or I call my kid or whatever, I tell them to come and see it because it's just the funniest thing. I thought it was just me that thought that whatever the concept was. And it's just, there was something so great about it, as a theme, just focusing on humor to make people react in a type of way. But as I got on with my career and as I started working more and more, it started becoming a little bit more difficult because clients, they didn't want the funny stuff anymore. They didn't want the witty creative stuff. They wanted ROI. They really wanted to start selling as much product as possible. And myself and a lot of other young creatives who were at the agency, just felt like we were on a little bit of a conveyor belt, I guess, where we were just churning out what we thought, client wanted to see. And, we weren't digging deep and finding things that resonated with us and resonated with, whoever we were trying to appeal to. So it just, became a little bit somber. We were just doing a lot of retail stuff. There was nothing, there was no connection at all. Because clients thought that, this was all a joke. Like, we need to be serious here. We're a bank. We can't be writing funny ads. And, the more we kept trying to push back, going, no, but this is the one thing that really connects people. And you can't go in this very serious direction all the time because, one, every other bank is doing it, or it's just not resonating. You can't use these big fancy words and think that people are going to kind of subscribe to you right now. You really need to dig deep and find the things that, make people want to partner with you. So after some time, it was in 2010, I went to watch a stand-up comedy show, my first stand-up comedy show ever. So, at this point, I've never considered, jumping on stage because it's just never been a thing. I just never thought I could turn it into a career. And that's where I got that spark again, that same spark I got when I would walk into the library and open books and just be drawn to incredibly witty, hilarious ads or pieces of communication, any form of design, because I would sit and listen to these comics on stage, just talk about where they're from, whatever, any relatable stories, but find very clever ways to piece these things together. And instead of laughing, I was just analyzing, looking around at everybody just eating out of their hands and going, wow, man, what an absolute superpower, to get on stage and be paid to have people connect with and laugh at your crazy thoughts. It was just unbelievable. I just couldn't believe that this was happening, for however long that comedian was on stage. And I decided that I'd like to try this because I needed that spark again. I really would like to try this because I just felt a little bit empty. I just felt a little bit uninspired. There was no creativity in what I was putting out at work. It just became more and more difficult. I was getting physically sick, burnt out because I just was not having fun at all. So I then decided to write my first 5-minute set. Never done this before. Have never consumed enough stand-up comedy to know how to even do this. I just, I did what I did. I kind of wrote it like I would if I was writing an ad, basically. I wrote that 5-minute set and I booked a slot to perform at the time. It was an institution. Everybody has come through there. Trevor Noah, Joey Rasdeen, David Gow, they've all come through the Underground in Melville, they call it. It was, a show that happened every single Sunday night. And I performed. And people laughed. And I can't explain to you, it is very difficult to explain to anybody what it feels like getting on stage and sharing your thoughts and having a room full of people resonate with that thought and just throw back a roar of laughter at you. There's a sensation that happens in your brain that just, man, it's the euphoria. I can't even find the word to describe it right now. How amazing that feels. It becomes addictive immediately because then you realize that you are in absolute control here of these people's emotions. You're tapping into a very difficult thing to tap into. Let me step back a little bit. You're tapping into a very, how do I describe it? I'll step back a little bit instead of saying tapping into, because then it becomes a very complex way of explaining this. It's not easy. It's easy to get on stage and talk to people, but get on stage and make a room full of people laugh for 5 minutes, 10, 15, 20, 45, whatever it is. Is no joke. There's an absolute science to it, being able to grab people, make them, relate to you and connect with you and just run with everything that you're saying. It's just, the energy is really, really indescribable. And of course, the feedback that comes afterwards, where people just go, man, yeah, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. Like, how is this even possible? How are you able to take such a very simple topic and, flip it on its head and turn it into this bright, new, shiny thing that, I've never, ever thought of before. And that's when I knew that this is what I should be doing. This is who I should be connecting with. I shouldn't be at an agency. I shouldn't be at an institution where the ideas that I think are going to make people happy, are going to make people feel a type of way, are constantly being, reviewed, by a creative director or by a client who goes, yeah, I don't know. I don't think so. I don't find that funny. Scrap it, So for me, this was such an interesting venture to go into, because I just loved this idea of getting on stage and sharing your thoughts and getting immediate feedback. There's something so raw about it, something so organic, about making people laugh, and something so natural, if you're able to do it. It's just really, really, it definitely sparked that creativity again. It definitely, the butterflies in my stomach came back. I felt like this is exactly what I should be doing, it also started making me a lot more creative. And, we can get into this discussion a little bit later. It's the one thing that I have found is, in a comfortable, fun situation where we're all laughing and relaxed, humor is that one thing that comes into play that can really spark creative ideas. We often find ourselves in environments where we're trying to write or we're trying to come up with any ideas. If you are too rigid and if the room feels quite tense, you're not going to get the best work out. There's a great state of flow that happens when laughs are being had, when the environment is fun, when the environment is happy. Absolutely, it's a really, really powerful thing. And until I got the opportunity to think about this topic, I never really thought about it that way. It's just what I do. Whenever I walk into a room now, I always try and set the tone. Not necessarily be the funny guy, but really set the tone, make it relaxed, break perceptions, break whatever hierarchy there is in the room, break all of that and get us all on the same level to allow for freer and more comfortable thinking. And then I'd been doing comedy for 10 years. It was absolutely amazing. It was very fruitful. We started a company, we started a lot of comedy clubs, and just unbelievable, in terms of my career, what humor, if I'm going to break it down to its simplest form, has done for me, personally, what I've achieved, the places I've traveled to, the people that I've been able to meet, just because I made them laugh. That's really it. People literally just paid me to laugh at my crazy thoughts. That's it, if I were to break it down in a very simple form. And then the lockdown happened. And as an entertainer, I obviously couldn't get on stage and entertain people. I couldn't perform at all. And I could feel myself, just, what's the word? Just falling into this little hole of, I'm so used to going out every night or whenever I get the opportunity and just sharing ideas and getting that laughter. I don't know, it almost feels like I was having like withdrawal symptoms. I needed that reaction from people. I needed to create things that, made people respond to whatever I was trying to put out. So my wife and I, who's also an entertainer, she's a violinist, decided to collaborate. And, we started making a lot of content in lockdown because we sat down and we thought about it and said, people are going to be at home, people are going to be consuming a lot of TV. People are going to be on their devices, on social media. This is the perfect time. This is the audience that we really need to start appealing to now. Not only should we be entertaining ourselves, but we should be entertaining this audience because that's what we do. It's just the stage is different. The stage is virtual right now. So instead of going on and doing comedy sets or her playing the violin, we started creating interesting content that people could consume every day. Any idea that came to mind, we were just putting it out. We didn't really edit as much. We were just going. It was such a wonderful, we would sit there and laugh, she'd wake up first, or I'd wake up and she'd say, oh man, I dreamt of this idea. I got up in the middle of the night. I thought of this idea. We have to put this out. It was such a wonderful connection that happened there between us. It definitely made our relationship stronger, because we were sharing this common thing and just laughing about it, these crazy ideas that we could put out. And it really worked well for us because, we started putting out all this content. And, I think the feedback for me was really the one thing that I didn't expect, from whoever was consuming it. Like, we'd get a lot of comments like, man, you guys made us forget that we were in a pandemic, even just for 20 minutes, the world was in, complete darkness. And, you managed to give us just a glimmer of hope, with whatever it was we were doing. We created a lot of parodies. We created a lot of content where we collaborated, where I'd bring the comedy, she'd play the violin. I would challenge her to do crazy things like, let's see if you can play 10 movie scores, for example, on the violin. And she would sit there and on the spot, she would make this up while I react. And people really loved, seeing that kind of thing, just two ordinary, relatable people at home trying to have fun, trying to bring a glimmer of hope, in or during those times. And, when I think about it now, I at the time we were really just having fun and trying to entertain people. And now when I think about it, I realized, it was what an important thing to do. What a great responsibility to take on, to try and give people a little bit of hope, to try and give people, just show them just a little bit of light, that we can still laugh, even during these times. Because we're South Africans, and South Africans are some of the funniest people in the world. And it's, we are used to trauma, we are used to turmoil, but we somehow seem to find a way to find the funny in all of this. And I think it's the one thing that really connects us. And to get a little bit philosophical, I think that's where humor plays an important role. Because what I've realized in what I do, in comedy or when I'm creating content, as a country, I still feel that this discipline isn't one that's taken seriously. I don't think we take, theater actors who kind of take a comedic spin on whatever they do seriously. We don't take comedians seriously. But at its core, we all need humor. It can't all be serious. It can't all be business. Like I said before, it's the one thing that really binds us. It's the one place where you're going to find relatability, commonality, within cultures. It's a tool to teach people, and I mentioned it earlier, to break the ice, break the tension, and just really get to a good medium and a good state of flow, especially when people are laughing together. Because like I say, as human beings, we are designed this way. That's what we do. Babies laugh before they even understand what a joke is, before they even understand what humor is. You just need to make a funny face and you're going to get a laugh from a baby, which, I've got a 1-year-old right now, and it's my favorite thing in the world to do. There's nothing that makes me happier than walking into a room or into her bedroom or into the lounge, wherever she is. And I've had quite a day, and whatever it is I do, I see this massive smile on her face, or she gives me this ridiculous giggle. everything that I've been through just completely disappears. We also take for granted the saying, laughter is the best medicine, because it really, really is. I've been through, 2 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with adrenal fatigue. I've been pushing myself way too hard. So that's very deep burnout. And my doctor told me, this is so ironic for somebody who gets on stage, makes people laugh, makes people happy, um, you know, basically is responsible for releasing all these amazing endorphins, to thousands of people in a room, in an audience. And you don't seem to be doing this for yourself, and I stepped back and I thought, wow, man, that's actually quite profound. Like, I think maybe I take it so seriously that I don't give myself time, to laugh. Because when I was in the, starting comedy, and, I spoke about the butterflies earlier on, man, that euphoria, just that adrenaline just really kept me going. I there was no burnout at all. And I think probably now I just started taking it way too seriously. I don't have as much fun as I should with it. Maybe I'm just overthinking it as well. But it's really made me realize, I mean, look, I mean, in the last week, I've thought about this quite a bit, and, really tried to, have as much fun as possible, make my daughter laugh as much as possible, because it heals me as well. And I mean, I'm no doctor at all, and I'm no therapist, but if we're going to talk about that side of humor, and like I say, I mentioned laughter is the best medicine, is something, those are words that we just throw around flippantly, but it really is. It really, really is. It doesn't matter what you're going through. If you put in a situation like that, or in a situation where you just forget about your problems, there's no stress at all, and you are able to laugh from your belly, it's just an indescribable feeling. There was a time I jumped on stage once, and a lady came to me afterwards and said, I wasn't going to come to the show today. She had just divorced her husband. I wasn't going to come to the show today. I've been going through a really tough time, really difficult divorce. Two of my friends, they came and they literally dragged me here. And I'm only telling you this now because I feel like I need to get it off my chest. But tonight, you may have just saved me from suicide. You may have just saved me from suicide, because I've been having these thoughts every single day. I mean, such deep depression. But I watched you on stage and I completely forgot about this darkness that I'm living through. You made me realize there's more to life, and I need more of this. I crave more of this. I should be laughing. It doesn't have to be with stand-up comedians. It could be with my friends. That's actually what this is about, what life is about. Friends, family, connection, laughter. The Scandinavians have a word called hygge, Hygge, which basically translates to comfort, warmth, laughter, sharing, caring, people, and they live by it. People always talk about why the Scandinavians always seem so healthy and happy, is because that is their philosophy. They don't believe in stress. They believe in coming together and trying to laugh and share and chat and just smile and have as much fun as possible, because that is the secret and that is the key, or that is life, rather, not secret or key, that is life, and that's how it should be lived. So going forward, I think I don't really consider myself a stand-up comedian. I don't consider myself a content creator. I think I need to just step back and go, man, I've got a real responsibility here to bring people together. And let me step back. Jim Carrey actually has one of my favorite quotes of all time. And Jim Carrey says that he was inspired by his father to do what he does now. And his father told him that you have a purpose. You're funny, you're very good at creating scenarios or situation where you're able to kind of remove people from discomfort or whatever it is, just make them laugh. So he told him, this is your purpose. And if anybody out there is trying to find their purpose, always ask yourself this question: what do they need that your talent can provide? I'll say that again. What do they need that your talent can provide? And that's how I kind of like to look at this right now. I don't just go on stage to write jokes to make people laugh. I always go, how do I take somebody out of a terrible day they've just had? How do I take somebody who's, slipping into a little bit of depression? What is it that I can do just to give you a glimmer of hope and, make you realize that everything is going to be okay? And really, that for me is the power of humor, and definitely something that needs to be taken a lot more seriously. And I'm glad to be a part of it. I really am. Yeah, I don't want to keep talking. I'd like to chat to you guys, about how you feel and what your definitions of it are, because I'm really trying to learn, as well. And I want to make this as interactive as possible. If there's any question that you want to ask me, please, turn your camera on, turn your microphone on, and let's chat, man. I feel like, and it's exactly what I was speaking about earlier on. I never want this to be one-sided. This is Huga. This is what it's about. I want us to laugh together, and I want us to experience, the power of humor, hopefully, at the end of the session. So if anybody wants to get online now and chat, please let's do.
Thanks so much, Donovan. That is so inspiring, and I'm such a huge fan. And yes, the world academia certainly is really starting to take humor and comedy seriously, especially in South Africa, which is fantastic. And that's what I'm trying to do with this postdoc project and hosting these humor seminars with Andrea. So we're just so happy to have you here, really. I have a couple of questions for you. The first one I want to know, because you were so active during the pandemic, how has your comedy changed? How did the pandemic change the way you do comedy?
That's a very good question. What I did quite a bit during the pandemic is look at people's comments. Just or whatever people commented on what we had put out, I would go through all of those and just find the commonality, or if I mean, I'm trying to find a good example here of something that I had put out and people started giving their own versions of whatever that was. And I realized that sometimes I overthink, and especially, sort of 8 years into doing comedy, I've been doing it for 10 years now. So 8 years into doing comedy, I started overthinking it quite a bit, and I got too scientific with it and too scientific with the way I write, so I would count how many words before the first punchline comes, how long is the story? Is this a one-liner or is this a whole story? How do I bring this punchline back? Blah, blah, blah. It became very scientific, and too analytical versus just going out there and sharing a story, not trying to be too perfect with it. That started becoming my problem. I think in comedy and just in any of the other work I was putting out, perfectionism started becoming a huge problem for me, because then I just stopped having fun. I wasn't telling a relatable story here anymore, and people could see right through it. It was just me trying to write. I was almost writing for writers and for comedians, because comedians often don't laugh at other comedians. We all sit and we watch how you've put this thing together. And I think I started letting that slip through my fingers a little bit. But when I started creating content online, I was now dealing directly with people. And, social media is a very interesting place, because you don't have a lot of time to get people's attention. You're at war with people's thumbs all the time. So whatever you put out has to be instant. You don't even have 2 seconds. If you're putting a video out, for example, you've got to tell me what I'm going to get from all of this in that first second. People almost have to have an idea, and then they will sit through whatever you're trying to put out. So time becomes very critical. But what it also does is it stopped making me faff. I get to the punchline as quick as possible. no roundabout ways. I'm not trying to take you on this long, boring journey. Let me just give you the punchline immediately and then just move on to the next one. It made me feel a lot freer as a performer and as a writer. So even now, I mean, I still create a lot of content online, and I've learned that there's a very different texture that on the internet and on social media, but it's filtered through into my comedy, and I'm a lot more relaxed, and I resonate with the people I resonate with. I'm not trying to appeal to everybody here. Whoever goes with me on this, that's cool, and I just keep moving. That's what it did.
Thanks so much, Donovan. Your perfectionism is probably one of the reasons for your adrenal fatigue, pushing yourself too hard to be perfect.
Exactly it.
A curse. It's a curse. I have a question here from Mary Duca. She's had to leave, so she asked if I can just ask you. I want to know how you navigate content creation during this time of cancel. I'm sure she means cancel culture.
Yes.
Have read interesting stuff about comedians starting to self-censor. How do you navigate the space, funny versus demeaning, within the context of woke culture?
Very good question. And it's something that a lot of comedians have started coming together to discuss, because it can end your career immediately. I've never been a controversial creator or comedian. I've never gone down that route. I don't swear on stage. I don't talk about sex, politics, religion, none of that. So for me, I'm not too worried, and I'm not too sensitive about cancel culture, because there's honestly nothing that I think I do that offends people. For me, it's really always just about fun. I do a 10-minute joke about Chappie's bubblegum, for example. A very simple, a very mundane thing, but I break it down and I find little insights about Chappie's that South Africans just connect with immediately, and they go, wow, never thought about it that way, So there's really nothing that anybody can pull from me. But what I have heard from a lot of guys, and I've seen a lot of guys now start to censor themselves, there are comedians out there who've stopped performing for a while because, they're quite dark on stage, and there's a market for those things. But in this day and age, I'm starting to see it as well. I also, we've seen a lot of young comedians especially get on stage and try and use the shock factor to get people to buy into them. And it's quite disturbing, because you can watch a comedian who goes down a very sort of dark path, but somehow they seem to tie it up at the end. They make a lot of sense, at the end, the way they've kind of used that dark part as a vehicle to make you pay attention and get you to a point they're trying to make. Whereas you're seeing a lot of young guys either swear or just say really harsh things, just to get people's, to shock people, get their attention. But yeah, in this day and age, that doesn't fly anymore. You will get called out immediately. Everybody has a smartphone. People will film you. That will go out on social media, and that will be the end of your career. Actually happened to a young comedian who he posted, I don't know, there was something about the what was it? I can't even remember how. I'm gonna mess it up if I try and explain it. But man, and he's relatively unknown guy. He's not big on the comedy circuit, and he posted this thing on Twitter, and 3,000 retweets later, or quote tweets and comments, man, people just took him apart. And the problem is, no promoter is going to put you on a poster, because people will rebel and they won't come to that show, or they will boo and just completely take that rhythm or the rhythm of the show out. So yeah, I think one has to be cognizant, and you can't be reckless. There was a time back in the day when comedians could say whatever they wanted, but I think now that more people have a voice, and more people should have a voice, actually, you can't just go out and say things just to get a laugh. It's cheap and it's nasty, And I don't stand by it. But me personally, I've got nothing to navigate around because I never play in that space anyway.
Thanks so much, Donovan. Yes, this woke culture, I just have to say quickly before I go to Jackie, it leaves very little space for subversive humor. But I think if subversive humor is used towards those in power or something like that, it can be more powerful. But definitely in this day and age, I think if it's directed at certain groups of people, yeah, it can be very offensive and definitely not beneficial for the comedian making the jokes.
Yeah.
Jackie Luck, do you want to take your put your camera on and ask Donovan your question?
Yeah,
if I could just interject there, Jackie would just like you to maybe share her comment that she's put in the chat. She doesn't necessarily want to ask a question or put a camera. If you would,
no problem. Oh, there we go. Jackie, speak.
Hi, Jackie.
Jackie, please unmute. There we go.
Thank you. Hello, Donovan. Thank you for being with us. I wasn't going to speak until Jenna told me to switch my camera on. I thought maybe it's rude. Donovan, I'm in your faculty.
Oh, wow, amazing.
Yes. So I know for me, it's just made me wonder how one brings it into the classroom space, you know, especially what you said about it helping us with our traumas. And so I think there's a lot of wisdom in humor and knowledge. And, you know, it was just a self-reflection for me. But I thought I won't be rude. I'll just switch my camera on.
No, I like that. You know, this is what I prefer, actually. You know, I prefer the one-on-one engagement. It also just helps me speak when I can see somebody. Yeah, we went through a time when we were doing stand-up comedy like this, where I had no feedback from the audience at all. It was absolutely awful. So that's why I encourage this. Please turn your camera on and speak to me. So basically, your question is, you want to know, how do you bring this into the classroom, essentially?
It's just a question for myself, about humor.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, humor is such a subjective thing. And this is one of the reasons why I didn't want to show any of the work that I've done, because I mean, I find it funny. Gary would find it funny, and Jackie, you would look at it and go, oh, that's a weird example. Doesn't resonate with me at all. You know what it does, you know, and I think this kind of answers Gary's question as well about the science of humor. It's made me always kind of look at, or just break away from tradition a little bit, because I feel so sorry for a lot of the young talent, or especially young creative people right now. The internet is a gift and a curse, you know. Wonderful gift because, I mean, you've got access to so much information out there. You've got access to so many references out there. But at the same time, because it's so easy to go online and click a button and get whatever you're looking for, I think it's really starting to deprive young people, this generation nowadays, of process, and not falling in love with the process of coming up with ideas and having fun with ideas. You know, I feel, and I've done a lot of you know, workshops and talks with you know, young design students or art students, where the point is really just to get that end piece on that piece of paper or on that computer screen, and not enjoy and have fun getting there, you know. So I'm trying to find how one would do this, because you've made me think about it now and figure out how I could introduce this into a you know, a talk to young people. But probably one of the best ways is to look at how a joke is constructed. And it's really just like the basic definition of a joke is, excuse me, the intersection of two opposing ideas, two things that should not go together at all. And that's where you're going to find the funny. A good example of that, I think, or one of my examples is I do a joke where I speak about how elections would have been so much more fun if it wasn't us going to line up and vote and getting the stamp and all of those things. What if it was just a rap battle between two politicians? Like imagine in 94, if Nelson Mandela versus F.W. de Klerk in a rap battle, whoever wins the rap battle wins the election, you know? And I do that in a Nelson Mandela accent, rapping over a beat. And it's such a ridiculous thing for people to see happening. But it's because of that weird intersection, you know? It could have been a very serious topic where I went, oh, this would have been a lot more fun if it was the two of them having a write-off and whoever wins the best short story wins the election. Boring. But if you go rap battle, Nelson Mandela, those are very weird. They can spark a lot of crazy ideas in your head. And then if you actually show it, I think that just brings like a whole different world, or it opens up a whole different world. And it opens up to a lot more original thinking. And I think if you started applying this in a classroom, so if you gave somebody a brief or you gave a group of students a brief and said, here's the brief, this is what I want you to do, but you can only use A, B, and C to execute this thing. I think you really start to activate a different side of the brain there and a different side of creativity, because now you're forcing people to play again, and which is something that I feel like we've lost, you know. I think once you get to the, what do they call it? I think the age of 7, or there's like a weird age where people say that you stop being yourself and you stop playing wholeheartedly. Now you do what you think people want to see and you do what you think is right. So bringing play back into the classroom, I think is a really, really good way to have people have fun, laugh again, and just really dig deep and generate good, wholesome ideas again. I think, I mean, don't quote me on this. I know this is going online at some point, so technically you are, but I think it's really breaking down that intersection of two ridiculous ideas that should not come together, and then trying to create something new and just playing again. Don't get on the internet. Don't search for ideas, because that's just going to disrupt the process completely. Jackie, I really hope that answers your question.
Thanks, Donovan. You've made me think also a lot. Thank you. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Donovan. Gary, I know that Donovan said he was going to touch on your topic, but would you want to speak to Donovan or ask more questions or build on the question you've already got?
Yeah, I'd like to hear, what do you mean by the science of humor, Gary, and where are you seeing this?
So Jen, yeah, thanks very much. I'd love to chat to Donovan, and thank you for your presentation or your input. That's been great. So, I mean, you were talking about that you constructed your humor based on a sort of scientific view of it, and I was just interested in what you see that science to be, you know, sort of the structure of that. And then you'll see I added a second question, if I may, whether you have any views on roadkill. And I don't know if you've seen in social media why it's trending at the moment, but
no, I haven't actually.
Yeah, so John Steenhuisen did a podcast with two guys. I don't know, I can't remember the guy's name.
Yes, Mac G.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, exactly. In which he was asked they just prompt him with a word and then he responds. And they said roadkill, and he responded, that sounds like my ex-wife. And so social media, social media has kind of has split in two on the thing, obviously. So some people saying, yeah, that's a fantastic joke. And the podcasters themselves thought it was hilarious, you know.
Yeah.
So in the moment, it was really very funny for them in that context. And I can understand that, you know, on the stage together kind of thing, you're trying to facilitate and aid your host, but the considered consequence of that afterwards is a considerable negative, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's an interesting display of how humor lands, I think is probably the right word. So I was interested, what is the science? I mean, you know, if you were to advise dear John, what would you say to him? You know, that okay, listen, dude, you know.
Okay, so I'm going to approach this with two different hats here. So as a joke, it's a very, I mean, it's a classic misdirection type of joke, you know, where somebody asks you one question and you answer it in a completely different way that just, you know, nobody was expecting, but when you connect the dots, it still makes a lot of sense, you know. So good joke, good on him for coming up with that off the top of his head in that moment. Fantastic. Why it doesn't work for John is because John is a politician. A lot of controversy that has been centered around John for a long time. So everything that he says, there's a very, very strong lens on him all the time. You know, and at any point, people are trying to take John out, like with most politicians, you know. So when you say something like this and you mention woman and the word kill, it doesn't matter how you try and justify it. People look at those two words and they look at who said it and they go, oh, he is a misogynist, or he is this, or he is that. That's just how people see it. And I go back to that thing I said about the gift and curse of social media. You know, people take in little chunks, bite-sized chunks, because I can imagine right now, all people have done is taken that little snippet. And if you've never seen the entire podcast, they've taken that little snippet, but they haven't seen the buildup to how they got there. They haven't seen how the podcasters almost set him up and got the environment comfortable enough for him to put that out. Because if it was a tense environment, he would never just throw that out. But because they're all laughing and they've made it fun and playful, he was like, okay, cool, we're going with it now. He relaxes, boom, drops the joke. It's fun for all of them. Social media, that's all they take out. Bam, he's the bad guy, and he's going to be the bad guy now for the next 3 or 4 days, because people are now going to start digging and finding other little things going, oh, this is probably not even a joke. Look what he did here. Look what he said there. It's so tricky. And I think it goes back, you know, to the earlier question about cancel culture that Mary Duke had asked. It's those little things that you also have to be very cognizant of, because in the moment, very innocent thing. He doesn't mean it, you know, but he's obviously gone through whatever he's gone through. I don't know what the situation is. I haven't seen it, but as a joke, funny, you know, very quick, very witty, very sharp to come up with it at that point. But based on the environment, based on the setup, based on who he is, what he stands for, based on the fact that the country is just in complete turmoil at the moment, and you can't be coming here telling jokes and, you know, making light of something during Women's Month. How dare you? You see, there are all of these factors that are just going to come at you in that moment. So yeah, I think it was very irresponsible of him to do that. And, you know, this is what he should be expecting, because John gets a lot of flack on social media, especially on Twitter, for a lot of the stuff that he does, like most politicians. Fikile Mbalula, every single day getting flack. Natim Tetwa, every single day he gets flack. Nobody wants to hear your jokes. People want to hear how you're going to fix the country. We don't care about this. Why are you on a podcast? Shouldn't you be somewhere making sure that we electricity? You see, it's so touchy when it comes to that, because if a comedian or somebody else had said that, people would have laughed and moved on, but only because of the position he finds himself in. Very tricky. Yeah, that's how I feel.
I mean, without seeing it, you've basically summarized social media's response to him. You know, I mean, it has exactly those things. You know, tricky. I mean, is it possible that a politician, you know? So I understand what the DA were trying to do. What they were trying to do is show him to be a human, you know, and that he can be funny and that kind of stuff. But is it ever possible for a politician to be funny?
I think it is, man. But first you have to do what politicians do. Fix the problems, you know, because people are just angry at the moment. They don't want to see you being funny. They don't want to see the jokes. But it's definitely, possible for a politician to be funny. And I would, if I was on that strategic team, well, I probably wouldn't, but I can see why, why they would have gone, put him on the biggest podcast in South Africa at the moment and let him speak to the people and let him tell his side of the story, because this podcast really pulls in, it pulls in big numbers and people are like fixated on it. But I think they knew that it would come with some form of backlash. Maybe they were expecting it as well. Who knows?
Well, for them, it's great free advertisement. I think that they suspected that he would do some kind of throwaway like that creates it. But the DA themselves have taken that clip and amplified it. They've used that to advertise the.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes, yeah. So they've compounded it, and they've just. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating how humor can and can't work, And I was trying to think of a politician that is funny. I can't think of a funny politician.
That's true, actually. I think a lot of that stuff also gets suppressed. They're like, nah, let's not go there. They're gonna come for us if we try and be funny here in this situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Donovan.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. I was laughing out to myself that you're saying you can't think of a funny politician, yet I can think of so many politicians that I laugh at. I found it hilarious. Donovan, our last question is from Dr. Massey Sekovat, who is internationally speaking, one of the best scholars in humor. So I'm very intrigued by his question to you. Massey, do you want to put your camera on?
Gosh, you gave me like the smartest person in the room here to answer a question.
Hi everyone, lovely to be here and thank you very much. I'm not all that really. Lovely to see you again after the short hiatus that this seminar has got. So 2 points, I'll add very quickly something else about politicians being funny. Many right-wing politicians are funny and they use humor in order to further their causes. Trump could be one cause. I don't find him funny, but very many people laugh at what he says. This is also another function of humor. But the point is this: do you think that humor is consequential or not? Because in what you said that one audience member came to you after the show and said that you might have saved me. You might have saved my life. But many scholars in humor studies do not believe that humor is consequential in any way. So what would your argument be to persuade them that humor can have consequences, whether they be positive, negative, bad, or good?
Yeah, you see, and this is what I was saying earlier, when I mentioned that as a country, humor isn't taken seriously. Often when I tell people that, let me take a step back a little bit. Somebody will ask me to come and whatever it is. I just got a brief this morning to do comedy at the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. They're very serious people, right? And I've had to do comedy at the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, and it's not easy because they just don't laugh. It's almost like they're trained not to laugh. You have to dig so deep, to get it out of them. And I got a call this morning asking if I'd be available to do a 30 minutes of comedy. How much would 30 minutes of comedy cost at this big, whatever it is that they were doing? So I give them the number, or my manager gives them the number, and then the guy doesn't speak to my manager. He comes directly to me and he goes, gosh, how can it cost that much to tell jokes? Like this, that's ridiculous. Obviously, being an accountant, they've worked out the numbers here and they go, that makes absolutely no sense in our world. No ways. We do the numbers for this company or we do the numbers for companies. 30 minutes of comedy costs that much. Absolutely no way. We can't do that. Explain yourself. So I go, you go and do it then. you came here with a purpose. You came here because you're not just asking me to come on stage and tell jokes. You're asking me to provide 30 minutes of fun and lightheartedness to a very, very serious program. And the program is 5 hours long. I've got 30 minutes to make people sit, because I fall like right in the middle of it. So I've got 30 minutes. People are sitting through all of this. They are, the other thing they failed to mention was, or they mentioned later was, a lot of people are going to be retrenched from this company. So if you do come and perform, just know that there's a bit of bad energy and bad tension in the room. So I go, man, that's a little unfair. Like, why would you bring me on to solve the problems that are happening in your institution? And now that you mentioned that, I'm now going to fully justify why I am charging you what I'm charging you to come and perform. It's a very difficult thing that you're asking me to do, because essentially he goes, we're going to announce or try and apologize, to the people who have lost their jobs. And then you come in, and then we're going to speak about our plans going forward, et cetera, et cetera. So I go, so you want me to come and slot in the middle of this and hope people stay and are in good vibes when you tell them, or and kind of set them up for a more positive, supposedly positive, whatever it is, a positive part of the program later on. He goes, yeah, that's what we want you to do. Can you do that for us, please? So I go, man, and you're still fighting with me and asking me why I'm charging this much. Do you realize how difficult it is, or what you're asking me to do? There was that part, and he goes, yes, but this and that and budgets, etc., etc. Then I asked him, why is comedy a good idea? Like, why wouldn't you get a musician to do it? No, people aren't really going to be entertained. We need somebody who can resonate. We've seen you before. We know that you are able to get on stage and really talk relatable stories and make people forget about what's just happened. And I go, right there, you have just explained why I'm charging you. I'm not getting on stage to tell jokes. I'm getting on stage to make people relax. And all of these things that I'd mentioned before. And he still, I didn't get the job, by the way. He still just couldn't see it. He was like, no, I don't get it. I don't see it at all. I'm often faced with a lot of these situations where people don't take humor seriously. They think it's a hobby. They think that I get on stage just to tell jokes and it makes me happy. And then I walk away and, they give me some money for petrol and they go, oh, but you can eat with us. You can have this little wonderful meal with us. And then I move on. I go, no, but this is my job. I sit and I construct these things. No comedian gets on stage and just kind of rambles. It's so well orchestrated. We sit and we write. I'm so sorry. I don't know what my dog is barking. Oh, there's a hadida out in the yard. So I hope it's not too disturbing, but he sees a hadida and he's not happy about this. And I think, Gary, this kind of touches on your question as well. And I know that I may have veered off here, Masi, but we sit for hours and days writing and constructing jokes. It seems like such a meaningless thing, but we sit and we figure out, how does this joke lead into this? Is this a single-minded thought? How long do I want to be on stage for? 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Am I going to leave room here for an audience member to chirp so that I can jump in and have something back that kind of adds to it? You're always on stage working, but the illusion is that you're just getting on stage and chatting to the audience. It has to feel comfortable. It has to feel free. It never, ever should feel like a set. And that's where the problems come in, when the academics, so to speak, go, it doesn't look like you're working at all here. I don't see, a PowerPoint presentation. I don't see you going through, various silos where we go, ooh, there was a lot of work put into that. Ooh, the writing there was so perfect. They don't look at that. They're just looking at the jokes. But the amount of times you have to die on stage before you get a joke right. We put ourselves on the line because you're completely naked. You're transparent out there. You have to try out thoughts. People don't laugh. You go back, you rewrite it, you come to another audience, you try it again, and you keep dying until you get that joke right. There are comedians who try this thing. We've seen a lot of young guys try it. They write a 5-minute set and they are so arrogant before they go on, and then they die and they never come back because it is soul destroying. It is absolutely soul destroying. But the effort that goes into it, the research that goes into it is astronomical, you know? And I'm always sad that people never get to see the process, because if you saw the process of how a single joke, just the lifespan of one joke can take 2 years to write and get right? And it could be a 20-second or 30-second joke, one joke, because you're constantly, and it all just comes down to connection. Like, I can see it in my head, but I'm appealing to a group of people here who all have different thoughts, all have different ideologies, but I've got to set this up in a way that lands just perfectly. So later on, when I get to that punchline, we are all on the same boat. South Africa, not a difficult place to, or it is a very difficult place to perform in. You can't do the same set in Joburg and think it's going to work in Durban, anywhere in the Eastern Cape or Cape Town. You've got to constantly be switching your set over and over and changing jokes and changing environments and scenarios, because all of those places are different. You have language barriers, you have cultural differences, you've got so many things going up against you. The psychology behind it is so crazy. Like, you're looking at this group of people in a room who, Dave Levinson, really great comedian, always said that most people don't realize that 2 minutes before we walk out on that stage, right? As you step out, you see somebody with their arms folded, and that, out of 1,000 people in the room, that is the only person that you notice. And that completely kills you before you've even said your first joke, because you already know that this is going to be a very difficult person to persuade. And you keep going back to that person, trying to hammer away at them, and they never, ever give you what you want. And it will break your flow and break your rhythm and everything that you've worked for completely. So your challenge is not so much that you're going in front of a room trying to tell jokes to people who've come to watch it. If you step back and you go, there's a room full of people here, a couple who probably had a fight on the way here, who struggled to find a babysitter. The wife is in a bad mood. The husband is angry because he scratched his car just before they came on. That's the person that you're trying to convince that the 150 Rand that they have just paid you was worth it. So it's so difficult. And I think going back to, you know, trying to persuade a skeptical academic about the impacts of humor, it's not so much an academic. I think that we do that every single day. It doesn't matter, you know, if it is an academic or not. Like, you're doing it with people every single day. You know that every single time we do a corporate gig, so versus a stand-up gig, you know, where people have paid money, they know what they know exactly what to expect. When you do a corporate gig, people are there, they're here to have fun, their drinks flowing, it's their year end, they're happy. Boom, the stranger comes on stage and goes, can I have your attention for 30 minutes so you can hear my stories, please? You've completely taken away everything, the environment and the comfortable, you know, setting that's been created for them. You've disrupted that and gone, hear me out, listen to me. You have to introduce yourself every single day. Every single day, every single time you go on stage, you hit the reset button, because it's a new audience, it's a new group of ideals, it is a new way of thinking every single time. So when it comes to persuasion, I just think that's naturally, as a comedian, we're probably the best people to speak about this, because I mean, there's satirists, there are you know, people who make parody or spoof videos, etc. Comedy or comedians, I think, are right at the top of that tier, because we're the only ones who actively go out and put all of ourselves out and leave yourself. I mean, you're naked on that stage. And what makes it difficult for us is, versus anybody who draws a funny cartoon like Zapiro, for example, or, you know, makes a funny video and puts it out on the internet, you've got time to let that sink in before the audience actually sees it. With us, it's immediate. You throw it out and it could be yay or nay, and you just have to keep going, you know? So I think we're just always trying to persuade people, and we find clever ways to do it. But ultimately, the trick is really being as human and as relatable as possible. People see through smoke and mirrors. If they see that you're trying to get them to laugh, they're not going to resonate at all. It always comes down to authenticity. It comes down to originality, and it comes down to storytelling. How interesting is the story that you're going to tell me? It's really those three basic things. If you tell me a very interesting story and it's something I've never heard before, and it's in your own voice and not, and a lot of comics suffer from this. They watch a lot of stand-up comedy and replicate a style and tone of how successful comedians tell stories. Without even, if somebody was telling me that story and I didn't know the comedian they were trying to replicate, my brain goes, I've heard this before. There's something about the way you're telling this that I've heard before. Authenticity, originality, storytelling, charm. Those are 4 factors that can convince anybody that humor and satire, I think, is a good way to go. I really hope I've answered your question, because I went down many different paths there. But what I wanted to do was also just tell, because nobody gets to see how these things are made, it's very difficult to go online and find what I've just spoken about now. You don't see that. We always see the end result, always. The edited, filtered end result. We see that final set. But to watch how it's constructed is just it's a mind-blowing process. It is a difficult process. Guys go through complete depression, or girls as well, complete depression. It's so tough, and if it just, getting up every single time, just being knocked when people just do not laugh, and it's so humiliating standing up there and nobody laughs at your joke. It is a heartbreaking thing, to pick yourself up and go back out again and try and do it over and over and over. Mentally, it's so draining. Physically, it just really destroys you. But that's the game, and that's why there are a handful of good or great comedians out there. That's why not everybody can do it. It's only it really is, because of that is, how much pain are you willing to take tonight? And like I say, it's a reset button. Every day is different, because every single audience is different, but you have to fight through it.
Thank you so much, Donovan. I'm going to wrap up there, because we have to head over into other meetings now.
Sure.
But I just want to, on behalf of everyone who's organized you getting here, I want to say thank you so much for being with us today, sharing your story with us, sharing your sense of humor, sharing the process, especially now at the end, the whole process that it takes to be a good comedian, that we're not always privy to, because we don't have the opportunity to speak to talent like you all the time.
Yes.
And then I also just want to give a quick shout out to Harshila, who handled the logistics of today's seminar, getting everything together, which is not easy, especially the technical side. And, Donovan's very popular, so that wasn't too easy either. So Harshila, I just want to thank you as well. And then very quickly, next week we have Prof. Abraham Olivier, who's going to be presenting on humor and pain. So there we're definitely going to see the benefits of humor. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Donovan. Thank you, Harshila. And we'll see you next week, Friday. Harshila, you want to speak?
Yeah, sorry, just before everybody leaves, Donovan, thank you once again. Jenna's just said that. So I think you've really given us lots to think about with the, power of humor. But there's a message on the chat, which I must just share with you and convey best regards from our Dean, Prof. Pam Maseko, Peter Binsbergen, who's the director of the Visual and Performing Arts department, and Jackie herself, who have all just asked us to pass their best regards to you. So a huge thank you from all of us. I hope this is not the last that you will be hearing from me, and that we could look at some other collaborations at some point in the future. But thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure listening to your story and all the insights that you have given us.
Thank you very much, guys. I really do appreciate it. You, this also, it made me think quite a bit. So that's always a good thing. I'm now left going, wow, I've never thought about, you know, especially with a lot of the questions that you've thrown at me. So I've, you know, I'm going to go and do my own research now and sit back and think about, you know, everything we've spoken about here today. So I appreciate it as well. I appreciate your time and for having me here.
Absolutely. I will share the text file with you, so you'll have the questions on email if you need a refresher on the questions. So I'm very happy to share that with you as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Stay warm and have a good weekend. Bye.